If this goes on, don't panic. Bringing hope to the world through speculative fiction.
Welcome to the latest and final episode of our audio column, Spec, Partisan. This week, Rick talks about mental health in writing and how writing has helped him maintain his mental health. Before we get started, don't forget you can find Rick's books, Leech Girl Lives and The Mold Farmer, anywhere you buy books. You can also still get a free electronic copy of Tentaclehead at his website, rickclaypool.org. That's rickclaypool.org.
I can't imagine how I would have made it through the past few years without writing fiction. As a researcher for a consumer group, it has often felt like it's my job to be a professional doom scroller, to keep up with everything going on in the world, to be able to talk in detail about my work exposing corporate abuses and government failures to reporters, fellow researchers, and government officials. I feel like, for my job, I can't look away. I must stay vigilant. It's overwhelmingly horrible sometimes. Sometimes because of terrible things in the world everyone is paying attention to, like Trump and COVID and climate change. Other times because I'm following more obscure, terrible things. A mental health problem I suffer from is rumination. The tendency to repeat upsetting thoughts to oneself over and over and over again. It's a response to trauma. The theory is the brain obsesses over bad things that happened and negative thoughts in order to avoid further future trauma. But instead of helping to avoid problems, rumination can create them, causing the sufferer to obsess over small problems that might not even be real and sometimes triggering overreactions and depressive doom spirals. Writing fiction helps my rumination, or more accurately, gives me something imaginary to ruminate about, something I have full control over, my stories, instead of world problems or personal problems I feel powerless to face. Basically, fiction lets me replace obsession with dissociation. Suddenly, I'm imagining worst-case scenarios involving made-up people and places, and it's actually kind of fun instead of terrifying. Making up stories allows me to lean into making up worst-case scenarios that are not just upsetting, but also hopefully entertaining. When I'm deep into a piece of long fiction, if I'm ruminating about anything, I'm ruminating about a cathartic scene when the things for my characters are completely fucked. I am an extremely sensitive person. Always have been. Quick to cry when teased in grade school, often upset about cruelties and injustices. Like the way the Trix rabbit was always denied cereal with mockery and the absurd declaration, "Tricks are for kids," in those commercials back then. That was so unfair and super upsetting to me at the time. And like so many other kids, my not great home life, combined with my overall awkwardness at school, often left me feeling powerless in the face of overwhelming forces that at best were indifferent and at worst were openly hostile. For kids who got a kick out of punching down on geeky classmates, I was low-hanging, punchable fruit. When the injustices of the world feel as big as they've felt over the past few years, and the forces trying to right the wrongs so often seem powerless compared to the forces they oppose, hopelessness can set in. The climate crisis, COVID, police violence against black people, anti-trans legislation, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, rising fascism, guns, wars, AI, all of it sets us on an apocalyptic trajectory, it seems. A polycrisis from which there is no apparent escape. The end of the world looms large in my imagination, and so it does in my fiction. Imagining the end of the world in fiction somehow makes what is happening in reality seem a little less scary. No, I'm not saying that what's happening in the real world should not completely fucking terrify us. It should. But what good is it if the correct degree of terror in response to all we face causes nihilism and paralysis? Delusions that make moving forward against the horrors seem possible or beneficial, actually. It makes me think of a refrain that recurs through the work of Samuel Beckett. I can't go on, I'll go on. And also about China Miéville's idea of the importance of resistance even when defeat is all but certain. And also about French philosopher Michel de Certeau's concept of making do, of essentially how doing your best with what you've got can itself be a form of resistance against oppression. No one really knows what's going to happen. My next book, Skull Slime Tentacle Witch War, is my strangest and also my most personal. Anxiety Press is publishing it. The engine that drives the story is the friendship between two moon mutants, one whose rage triggers murderous destruction outward, and another whose depression triggers suicidal destruction inward. All they want is to find love and comfort and to eat donuts. But monstrous manifestations of societal contradictions draw them into a series of tragic misadventures that draw them into an apocalyptic conflict between kaiju-sized sentient factories and AI-controlled zombies, an apocalyptic conflict that threatens to drown the world in blood, soda, and slime. I started the book back in 2019, when things were already pretty rough. It helped me through the next 5, as things got even rougher. My hope is that as things further and shitify, the book will find a few readers for whom it offers some solace. This is my final column for If This Goes On, Don't Panic. I want to thank Alan for inviting me 3 years ago to spout my rants at his listeners. His unwavering support and enthusiasm and patience and kindness made being a columnist easy, even as my self-doubt and anxiety has often led me self-sabotaging my deadlines. I may be pulling back from the podcast, but I'm not going anywhere. You can find me on all the usual platforms as Rick Claypool, Weirdstrug on Twitter, and for now, with a newsletter I call Absurdist Horror. For news about Skull Slime Tentacle Witch War, which comes out in May, keep up with me on one of these channels or check out my website, rickclaypool.org. Till then, I'll see you on the other side of the apocalypse, whichever one it may be.
Before we go, I'd like to say we will miss Rick's unique take on life here at If This Goes On. We are so glad to have gotten to work with him throughout the years and wish him success on his future projects. I'm looking forward to enjoying his next Bizarro novel, Skull Slime Tentacle Witch War, which will be coming out this year from Anxiety Press. Make sure you check that one out. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your support.